Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you a new Nancy Drew analysis video. Today's video is brought to you by the patrons over at Mystique Manor, and by all the official Fellow Detective channel members. If you too would like to support the channel and gain access to exclusive features, check out patreon.com/wizardkitten to become a patron, or click join next to the subscribe button to become an official fellow detective. Having just finished the latest Miss Clue mystery game, my brain has been abuzz with thoughts. When I stream the Miss Clue games, I often get two main questions. 1, I've never heard of these games, what are they? And 2, do you recommend them? I therefore decided to compile my thoughts about the Miss Clue series in one video, hopefully to help all of you mystery-loving fellow detectives who, like me, are experiencing the long and perhaps never-ending withdrawal left in the absence of the Nancy Drew PC games. Please note that this video will include mild plot spoilers for all of the released Miss Clue games, but should not include any major plot spoilers. I will be doing my best to stick to information that you would find in the promotional materials. But first, what on earth are the Miss Clue games, and where did they come from? Well, to be quite blunt, the Miss Clue games are knockoff Nancy Drew games in almost every sense of the word. The point-and-click navigation style is the same, down to the arrows and the magnifying glass. The plots of each Miss Clue mystery can be directly and indirectly tied to at least one Nancy Drew game, sometimes multiple games. Second chances, puzzles, and environments often seem to be directly pulled from a Nancy Drew game. Long story short, the influence of the Nancy Drew games is highly palpable. Whether that's a good or bad thing is up to you. Personally, I think it's a little bit funny, even though it sometimes leans dangerously close to plagiarism. It's clear that the people making these games noticed the hole left by the lack of Nancy Drew games and decided to fill it by copying it, more or less. This means that these games can scratch the Nancy Drew itch if you are a huge fan. However, and it's a big however, these games are not as well made as the main Nancy Drew series. We'll get into that later, but it is important for you to know that the Miss Clue games are copycats. Now into some of the details. There are currently 6 Miss Clue mysteries upon the very recent release of the newest game. We have number 1, Formula for Danger, number 2, Secret of the Haunted Garden, number 3, Peril in Pemberley, number 4, Cruise Most Deadly, number 5, Trials of Salem, and number 6, Christmas at Donner Pass. I was initially introduced to the Miss Clue games when I found them for free on a website called Virtual Family Kingdom. Through the last few years, I was able to play Formula for Danger, Secret of the Haunted Garden, Cruise Most Deadly, and Trials of Salem for free through that website. Peril in Pemberley was always only listed on the Miss Clue official website, as was Christmas at Donner Pass. Now, when the games were free through Virtual Family Kingdom, I would have recommended them to any mystery fan in a heartbeat. They were free, so why not? Have a crazy fun time, have a wild ride. Why not take a crazy chance? But now, all of the Miss Clue mysteries have since been removed from Virtual Family Kingdom, and all can only be played if you purchase them through the Miss Clue website. Formula for Danger, Peril in Pemberley, Cruise Most Deadly, and Christmas at Donner Pass are all $19.95. Trials of Salem is $14.95, and Secret of the Haunted Garden is $9.95. I presume that Trials of Salem and Secret of the Haunted Garden are less expensive because they are shorter than the other 4 titles. And so, with these new prices, would I recommend the Miss Clue games? Well, let's treat this review as I would all of my Nancy Drew game reviews. If you've seen my Nancy Drew reviews, then you know that I rate the games on 5 categories: plot and storyline, characters, setting and design, overall gameplay experience, and music and atmosphere. So, how do the Miss Clue games stack up? Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, the titular character of these games, Miss Clue herself? Yeah, it's Jane Darcy. As in the daughter of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet from, Pride and Prejudice. But she's in the present day, sometimes, and sometimes in some indeterminate point in the past, and sometimes in alternate universes. Honestly, it's extremely confusing and is never fully clarified. All we know is that she likes animals, particularly sheep. That's about as deep as her character goes. It also doesn't help that her personality changes from game to game, but I digress. Anyway, let's start with Miss Clue formula for danger. In this mystery, Jane goes on a summer vacation to her aunt and uncle's house and finds out about a mysterious formula. Her friend Anne also requires some help, which ends up connecting to the elusive formula. There are 4 to 5 characters in this game depending on how you count things. Anne, the daughter of the scientist who created the formula and Jane's friend. Alex, a guest at Twin Pines Resort where Jane is staying, who has a secret. J.A. Packard, president of a chemical company. And Harry, a local realtor interested in buying Anne's estate. In Miss Clue's Secret of the Haunted Garden, Jane heads to Dyer Mansion to help an old widow, Mrs. Danforth, unravel a haunting mystery as she prepares to sell the home. This one coincidentally takes place around Halloween. Mrs. Danforth, the aforementioned widow, is the only true interactable character. In Miss Clue Peril in Pemberley, Jane goes back in time when Pemberley Hall of Jane Austen fame was in its heyday. Jane must solve a mystery in Regency England, primarily stagecoach robberies perpetrated by highwaymen. There are 6 true characters besides Jane's maid Martha and her horse Copper. This includes Lady Catherine, Jane's pretentious great-aunt, Miss Allen, Lady Catherine's companion who is in love with Mr. Radcliffe, Kitty, the gossiping local innkeeper, Pierre, a mysterious French visitor, Mr. Radcliffe, a debonair gentleman in love with Miss Allen, and Clement, Jane's obnoxious cousin who writes bad poetry. In Miss Clue Cruise Most Deadly, Jane joins her friend Evelyn and Evelyn's father, Mr. Berkeley, aboard their yacht in the waters around New Zealand until a storm crashes their boat. When Jane is marooned on a deserted island, she finds a fascinating secret. There are only 2 true characters, the aforementioned Mr. Berkeley and Evelyn, though more random characters find their way in. In Miss Clue Trials of Salem, Jane is somehow transported to 1692 and is caught up in the horrors of the Salem witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts. She must save a convicted witch from her awful fate. This game has 5 true characters, including Janie True, granddaughter of the convicted witch, Bethia Phipps, granddaughter of Thomas Danforth, Samuel Phipps, Bethia's brother, Judge Jonathan Corwin, the lead judge in the witch trials, and Judge William Stoughton, an associate of Corwin's and a judge in the witch trials. Oh, and here's the kicker for this one, Lani Minella. Yes, the Lani Minella, the voice of Nancy Drew for 32 games, provides the voice acting for Bethia, Janie, and multiple side characters. No joke. In Miss Clue Christmas at Donner Pass, Jane visits a Victorian mansion and is pulled into a mysterious case where ghosts of the past are trapped within the house through mysterious circumstances. This mystery has 6 true characters: Francois, the French gardener at the mansion, Captain Jack, the Scottish maintenance man at the mansion, Nancy, the daughter of the original family who lived at the mansion, now more or less a ghost, Mr. Reed, the father of the original family who lived at the mansion, also a ghost, Mrs. Augusta Reed, the mother of the original family who lived at the mansion, also a ghost, and Cecilia Garden, a randomly introduced additional ghost. So, how are the stories? What are the plots? Are they compelling, unique, and easy to follow? Are there well-developed plots and subplots? Well, the reason that I can review all of these mysteries in one video is because all of them have similar strengths and issues. One of the biggest issues? The plots and stories are extremely convoluted. The confines of each individual game are rarely, if ever, explained. The Miss Clue universe does not appear interested in developing cohesive stories or in world building. Most of the stories instead jump from one unexplained occurrence to another. Think a parrot showing up in a coniferous forest to the chagrin of absolutely no one, or Jane inexplicably turning into a mermaid in a cave, or finding someone dead and covered in blood, only to find that they were just pretending. These types of what the actual heck moments are not a rarity in the games. They are in fact more common than sensical plot building, which doesn't necessarily need to be a problem if the games were clear about this from the beginning. In all actuality, the games appear to be interested in pushing the boundaries of fantasy and reality. If they were highly clear about their magical realism and integrated such intentions into the actual storyline, rather than just allowing them to appear, they'd be a lot more compelling. As such, the plots and storylines can usually be summed up in one word: confusing. If you're interested in well-written stories from which you can derive some sort of meaning, then the Miss Clue games are definitively not for you. If you're interested in a bizarre roller coaster ride that will shock and perhaps abhor you in equal parts, well, then you might give them a try. Lovers of chaos may enjoy the stories, but it's also not good, purposeful chaos. It's random, tossing aside possibly every rule for developing cohesive, compelling plots. And what of the characters? Well, once again, I can draw several conclusions that span across all games of the series. The characters are really bad. It's honestly difficult to say whether the plots or the characters are worse because they are inextricably linked. I have so many issues with the characters. First, they're all the same. Across the Miss Clue series, you'll get some version of a young girl, often with a pronounced lateral lisp, which appears to be a choice for character differentiation and one that I am absolutely not a fan of. Additionally, you'll get multiple white, middle-aged men, most of whom will have different accents. Australian, French, Scottish, and British appear to be favorites. You'll also usually get a couple younger white men, and on occasion, an older white woman. All of the character models are the same across the games with a definitive lack of unique facial features. Usually the only thing that changes is their hairstyles and clothes. The characters are all voiced by the same people, and their voices do not change from game to game and barely change within the games, when there are actually enough characters to justify needing different voices. This brings me to another issue. Several of the games have few, if any, characters or suspects. These games are marketed as mystery games, but you can't really have mysteries without suspects. The one that gets closest to a legitimate mystery is Miss Clue Peril at Pemberley, but even that one does a really awful job of developing characters in any meaningful way. The characters are all one-dimensional, have little to no backstories, and are usually incredibly frustrating to interact with. To this point, it is not uncommon for Miss Clue conversations to be lengthy, to an aggravating extent. They are long, and they are usually stilted and unnatural, almost never approximating the way people actually speak. The writing is usually absurd, and we rely on the exposition dumping within these conversations in order to make any progress within the games. This is not an exhaustive list of the problems that I have with the characters, but it is a comprehensive list of the successes of the characters, by which I mean there are no successes. I legitimately can't think of something good to say about the way that the characters are modeled, developed, written, or acted. The characters within this series are absurd at best, forgettable at medium, and offensive at worst. Honestly, they're real rough. If you're a fan of characterization in games, then you may need to give Miss Clue a pass. At this point, you may be thinking, is anything good about these games? Well, now I bring you to the category of setting and design. To be clear, I don't think that most of the settings of these games are good per se, but they are the strongest part of these games by a mile. Across the series, we get a Ghost Dogs of Moon Lake-inspired forest and cabin, a spooky haunted manor with a creepy garden, an estate in Regency, England, a deserted tropical island a la Ransom of the Seven Ships, 1600 Salem, Massachusetts, and a Victorian mansion. Again, most of these locations are more or less stolen from the Nancy Drew series, but they're halfway decent. The three-dimensional environments are also rather stunning. I can't really put it any other way. Most of the time, the game settings look really good. This is an area that the games have improved in over time as well, adding even more environmental details. The biggest issues with these settings is that the floor plans and layouts of many of the spaces are nonsensical, or pieced together like a messy jigsaw. There's usually no rhyme or reason to where things are in space, and there's often not a whole lot that can actually be interacted with. But hey, I'll give these games credit where credit is due. The environments in these games are prettier than Nancy Drew Midnight in Salem, and overall are not that bad. So on to the overall gameplay experience, which includes things like navigation, puzzles, and glitches that impact the gaming experience. With the Nancy Drew series, I never had to address bugs and glitches because they were almost never a thing. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Miss Clue. Bugs, glitches, and game breakers abound. These kinds of glitches are obviously a problem and need to be addressed, but even if the games didn't have these problems, the gameplay experience would still be really rough. In the puzzle department, the games have never successfully struck a balance of just the right amount and just the right difficulty. There are either too many puzzles or not enough. The puzzles that are included are either laughably easy or mind-numbingly difficult. What's worse, there is no in-game hint system for the puzzles or directions for nearly all of the puzzles. Most of the time, detectives are sort of just dropped into the games, left to hope and pray to the video game gods that they'll figure out what they're supposed to do or find what they're supposed to find. There's no one to call or ask for help, and Jane is annoyingly tight-lipped when it comes to telling us what we're supposed to do next. This is perhaps the biggest offender. Task lists are not a thing, and in-game triggers are sporadic, unexplained, and often impossible to find. This means that detectives usually are left to just wander aimlessly, with no direction and no understanding of our purpose. I suppose one could argue that this is an attempt to mimic real life because IRL, we don't have an omniscient voice that tells us what we're supposed to do next the way Nancy does, but it doesn't feel purposeful. It feels like an oversight, a game mechanic left out because it was not considered worth the time or effort. This further enhances the main issue with these games. They're so confusing. And finally, music and atmosphere. First, I can throw a bone to the games in the area of atmosphere. Yes, every once in a while, these games do actually manage to achieve the atmosphere that they were going for. I did get jump scared in Miss Clue Christmas at Donner Pass on a few occasions, and the game did sometimes manage to feel creepy. When playing Miss Clue Trials of Salem, I did sometimes feel a sense of urgency. When playing Miss Clue Secret of the Haunted Garden, I sometimes felt the eerie, creepy pull of spirits. So in that area, they are sometimes successful. There are other parts of the games where we get completely pulled out of the atmosphere, which is why I can't laud their praises too voraciously. Just like the environments, the atmosphere is a strength of these games, but only in comparison to the weaknesses. One of those weaknesses does happen to be the music, which is just a collection of royalty-free and often painfully repetitive tracks. They sometimes suit the mood of the moment, but not in a way that originally composed tracks would. The music, therefore, does the very minimal job of providing some background sounds for us to enjoy, but does it enhance the game in any way? No. It's there, but that's about it. So, in summary, do I recommend the Miss Clue games? Maybe it would be better to answer that question by imagining possible scenarios and fellow detective perspectives. To whom would I recommend these games? Well, if you are someone who wants a good laugh, yeah, I could recommend these games. The experience of playing the Miss Clue games is quite similar to that of watching a really poorly made movie. Sometimes it's just so bad that it's actually really funny and somehow ends up being a good time. If that idea sounds like fun to you, then yeah, give the games a go. If you love laughably bad things, really bizarre things, chaotic things with no rhyme or reason that are so unexpected that you can't help but be entertained, then the Miss Clue games are perfect for you. That's honestly why I've played the Miss Clue games. They're so bad that playing them on streams with you all is a genuine hoot that I am 1000% here for. I'm an avid mystery fan, and more specifically, I'm a big ol' Nancy Drew nerd. And the hole left behind by the Her Interactive series was vast. The Miss Clue games do not fill that hole in my heart, let's be clear. But if you're like me, a big fan of Nancy Drew, then these games may roughly approximate that experience. Those are about the only situations in which I would recommend these games, and even then, the newfound price tags make those recommendations a lot more tentative. You have to really be into Nancy Drew and totally ready for a ridiculous experience in order to enjoy these games, and that's a pretty particular market. But if you fall into that demographic and you don't mind the price tags, then strap yourself in for the ride of your life. It'll be bodacious. If you know, you know. And to whom would I not recommend these games? I would not recommend these games to anyone who is hoping for a good video game. That may sound harsh, but a solid gaming experience is not why you should play the Miss Clue games, because you will be very disappointed. The games are poorly written, the characterizations are awful, the games have a lot of structural problems that make them difficult to play, the music is nothing special or unique, and you will not get any meaning, lessons, or educational value from them. Especially now that you have to pay for these games, if you are looking for a good game and a good time, there are likely hundreds upon thousands of games available on Steam for less or by indie game companies for less that would be more worth your well-earned money. I might not be saying this so strongly if the Miss Clue games had shown some consistent improvement over time, particularly in the areas that really matter to me, like plot, characters, and gameplay experience. I'd be down for the roller coaster ride that is an absurdist magical realism adventure with Jane Darcy as our heroine, solving mysteries across time and space, but only if that kind of adventure, 1, actually had a point, 2, actually had some decent storytelling, 3, consistently worked, and 4, had unique, different characters that represented a much wider variety of experiences. There have been 6 Miss Clue games now, and they have not moved in any of those directions, so I feel confident in reviewing them as such. TLDR, there is a very specific market for these games, and I happen to fall within that market. Do I think the games are good and worth the cost? Definitely not. Am I still going to chaotically play them on streams with you all? You bet your boots I am. But does everyone need to? Well, proceed with caution. But what do you think, fellow detectives? Do you agree with my review? Have you played the Miss Clue games or just watched other people play them? What are your thoughts on all things Miss Clue? Let a Wizard Kitten know in the comments section down below. If you would like to come join a fantastic group of fellow detectives at Mystique Manor as a patron for the channel, gain access to exclusive content, and support the making of more content like this, please check out patreon.com/wizardkitten. I have also launched channel memberships with exclusive badges and emojis to use during streams and in the comment section. If you'd like to support the channel by becoming an official fellow detective, click join next to the subscribe button. Please feel free to follow the channel on Instagram or Discord, linked in the description box down below. And as always, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Nancy Drew and Sims 4 content. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.